The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and fear, and every step she took felt heavier than the last as the nurse's words echoed in her mind about unpaid bills and complications she could no longer afford. Outside the maternity ward, winter pressed its cold palms against the glass, and inside her chest, panic battled hope as her unborn child shifted, reminding her that time was running out. In that fragile moment, when dignity and desperation collided, a childless millionaire's impossible condition would change two broken lives forever. If you believe that kindness can appear in the darkest moments and that second chances can rewrite fate, please take a second to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to our channel Soul Tale, where real emotions meet meaningful stories. She was a young woman in a small American city, working two jobs that barely kept the lights on. The pregnancy had not been planned, and the father had disappeared the moment responsibility appeared. Every doctor visit felt like a gamble between rent and survival, and every night she lay awake calculating numbers that never added up. When complications were discovered late in the pregnancy, the cost of childbirth rose beyond anything she could imagine paying. The hospital offered paperwork, payment plans, and cold sympathy, but no real solution. She was told that without a deposit, they could not guarantee the care she and the baby needed. In a country filled with wealth and opportunity, she felt invisible, like a problem no one wanted to solve. Across town lived a man whose life looked perfect from the outside. He was a self-made millionaire, his name etched onto buildings, his schedule filled with meetings and charity galas. Yet his large, silent house carried an ache money could not touch. Years of trying to have a child had ended in medical reports and quiet disappointments. Adoption agencies moved slowly, surrogacy had failed him emotionally, and every birthday he celebrated alone reminded him that success meant nothing without someone to pass it on to. He donated to children's hospitals and funded scholarships, but generosity did not fill the empty chair at his table. His longing had turned into a sharp, desperate need that followed him everywhere. Their paths crossed through a social worker who believed in solutions others were too afraid to suggest. The woman was called into an office where numbers, risks, and legal words surrounded her like walls. She learned that the millionaire was willing to cover every medical expense, every hospital bill, and even provide stability after birth. In return, he wanted to raise the child as his own. It was not framed as cruelty but as necessity, not as theft but as rescue. For her, the offer felt like both a lifeline and a knife. She loved the life growing inside her, yet she feared bringing a child into a world of debt, instability, and constant struggle. Days passed as she wrestled with the decision. She imagined holding her baby in a cramped apartment, counting coins for formula, worrying about healthcare and safety. She also imagined a future where her child never worried about hunger, education, or opportunity. Each thought tore at her heart. Meanwhile, the millionaire waited, haunted by the possibility that his one chance at fatherhood might slip away. He walked through nurseries he had already prepared, rooms filled with light and toys untouched, wondering if hope itself was cruel for visiting him again. When labor began earlier than expected, there was no more time for hesitation. The hospital demanded confirmation, and the woman, exhausted and terrified, agreed to the arrangement so her child could be born safely. In that sterile room, as machines beeped and nurses moved quickly, she focused on breathing and on the promise that her pain would at least lead to her child's survival. The delivery was difficult, stretching every ounce of her strength, but when it was over, the baby's first cry cut through the fear like a miracle. Relief washed over her, followed immediately by grief so deep it felt physical. The millionaire stood on the other side of the glass, seeing the child he had prayed for with a mixture of joy and guilt. He saw the woman's pale face, her trembling hands, and for the first time understood the true cost of what he had asked. This was not a transaction, it was a sacrifice. As the hours passed, something unexpected happened inside him. The emptiness he had carried for years, was joined by a new emotion, one that questioned whether fulfilling his desire at the expense of another's heart was truly the man he wanted to be. Recovery was slow, both physically and emotionally. The woman lay alone, listening to the quiet, wondering if she had just lost the most important part of herself. Bills were paid, care was provided, yet the silence hurt more than poverty ever had. The millionaire, meanwhile, found himself unable to enjoy the victory he thought he wanted. He visited the hospital daily, not out of obligation but drawn by an unspoken connection. Watching the woman heal, seeing her eyes follow every sound from the nursery, he realized that love was not something he could simply acquire with money. Change began not with grand speeches but with small actions. He arranged counseling, not just for legal closure but for healing. He listened to her story, her fears, her dreams she had buried under survival. In that listening, his perspective shifted. He understood that a child did not need just one person's resources but a circle of love. He decided to do something radical, something that scared him more than loneliness. He offered support without ownership, stability without erasure, and a future where the child would know both where they came from and where they were going. Time passed, and the woman found her footing again, this time with education, support, and confidence she never thought she'd have. The millionaire found purpose not in possession but in responsibility, learning that being present mattered more than being powerful. The child grew surrounded by honesty, care, and a story rooted not in shame, but in courage and compassion. What began as desperation transformed into a partnership built on respect. Just before we reach the end of this story, we have a special request for you. Please comment below and tell us what you would have done in this situation, because your thoughts matter and your voice adds meaning to this journey. As the years went by, their lives remained connected by gratitude and growth. The woman no longer saw herself as someone who had lost, but as someone who had chosen love in its hardest form. The man no longer defined himself by what he lacked, but by what he had learned to give. And the child, raised in truth and kindness, became living proof that compassion can rewrite even the most painful beginnings. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel something real, please like, comment, share, and stay connected with Soul Tale. Your engagement keeps these stories alive and reminds us all that humanity still has hope.